Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to Office Hours FM episode 105. I am your host, Carrie Dills, and today I've got the Jeff Matson on the show. Jeff, how you doing today?
Well, pretty good. You know, the one and only, the beard's speaking for me today too. So
I expected, the mouth to kind of come out of the beard area.
Well, you know, I had to trim it up and everything a little bit. I try to look a little more presentable.
Well, you're doing swimmingly. So we'll be chatting with Jeff today. You can get your questions queued up if you're tuning in live. You can send your questions on Twitter using the hashtag OfficeFM, or over on, if you're watching via Google or YouTube, you can use the Google Q&A app to get all your burning questions in. Before we deep dive, I wanted to thank today's episode sponsor. We have got SiteLock, a return sponsor. They're a global leader in website security solutions, and currently they are on over 1 million WordPress sites, which is a crazy number. You can check them out at sitelock.com/officehours. If you're planning to be over at WordCamp Europe at the end of June, they're sponsoring over there, so stop by their table and say a big hello. And also a congratulations to Logan Kipp. He's an Office Hours listener and also the SiteLock security guy, and he'll be speaking at WordCamp Orange County, so you can catch some more on security in SiteLock there. So check them out. And with that, let's get cranking. Okay, so Jeff, for people that haven't been approached by your beard at an after party, a WordCamp or Pressnomics after party, give us the rundown, who you are and what you do.
So I am the Jeff Matson, also the beard. And well, I am the docs guy over for GravityForms. I just recently launched a new product called NotifyBot. Allows you to track your website and make sure that everything's running nice and smoothly, make sure that nobody changes things they shouldn't be. And then I am just that guy going to different WordCamps speaking, and recently, about 2 versions ago, WordPress contributor.
That's awesome.
So that's me. Yeah.
What was your contribution?
It was actually a very, very small contribution. It was moving a button in multi-site. It was basically taking it from one page, putting it in another, and then putting it in another location, and then styling it a little bit. There was really not much to it. Helen just dropped it in track late one night. And I just snatched it up, got it done real quick. So nothing crazy, but you know, of course, every little bit helps.
I love it. That's awesome. I may or may not have. I'm not an official WordPress contributor, but I've contributed to the Genesis framework, and those contributions have literally been just like, you know, a few characters of code. But hey, they're well-placed characters. Right. So this is totally off topic, but I noticed the glass that you're drinking water out of, and I think I recognize it as the Sam Adams Perfect.
It is.
Glass for drinking a Boston lager.
It is.
And I can't remember why it's the perfect glass, but
not entirely sure either. I just know I had a bartender friend of mine, and the bar had a ton of these, and she brought me a few for my birthday one year. So I mean, it's great for everything, really. I think really most of the glasses we have are actually some sort of beer glass.
So water, it's clearly a perfect water glass as well.
Well, this is actually Sprite. So I'm cheating a little bit and drinking.
Oh, well, there you
go. Usually it is water.
Okay, well, the first question out of the gate is not about anything WordPress related. It is from Todd. He is admiring your beard and wants to know if you use a special product to keep it in shape.
So well, first of all, to keep it in shape for the most part, you know, just I trim it constantly and brush it and shampoo it and all that fun stuff. But I do use Honest Amish beard oil. I actually just recently tried to switch over to Levin Rose beard oil, but I'm not a huge fan of the scent. So I am still using Honest Amish beard oil.
Yeah, I've tried that out on my beard, but it didn't quite work for me. So I'm still, maybe I'll give that other one a try. So Jeff, I got to meet you for the first time at Presnomics earlier this year, and we didn't get to chat long, but it was nice to really nice to put an in-person face with a name that I've interacted with your name on Twitter apparently. And kind of hear more of your story since then. You published an amazing post over on heropress.com last month, I believe, talking about some of your history and how you ended up where you are now with WordPress. And that was, if you're listening to this, go check out that article, because it really was, it was just a really beautifully done article. But you're somebody who's, I mean, you've been pulling things apart and putting things together for a long, long time. So it's no surprise that you're a developer. Before the show, you mentioned that you're not really a front-end developer. That's not necessarily your strength. So what would you consider your biggest strengths, at least in the development arena?
I'd probably say the ability to take things apart and put them back together again really translates both ways, both hardware and software. So, like, one of my biggest skills, especially, and that's why I write documentation for GravityForms, is that I can dissect other people's code really, really well, and so that leads me to better work with frameworks and contributions to different places and things like that, because I've found out that the docs guys in general have a certain mind to be able to just pick things apart and be able to understand exactly what's going on without too much work.
It's also a gift to be able to write technical documentation, something that actually makes sense to an end user and is written in plain English. Yes, I commend you. I've tried doing technical writing, and well, let's just say I'm not building my career in technical writing.
Well, my career is built in it, but I'm still. I mean, I feel like obviously I'm better than most people, but it's definitely still a challenge, and it never ceases to be a challenge.
So you do the GravityForms gig, writing documentation. You've got NotifyBot, which we're going to talk about in a little while, and then you also are still doing client work.
I do clients here and there, mostly just when somebody refers them to me. I don't actively search for client work. Usually it just kind of comes around, or previous clients that I've done work for, they'll come over to me and say, hey, I need this additional thing done. I'd say a lot of the client work is GravityForms related, which helps out a whole lot. And then those usually come from other GravityForms people. What's funny is that a lot of us over at RocketGenius, we take on so many other GravityForms projects. And I think the best thing about that is that us taking on other GravityForms projects on the side helps us better understand how people are actively using GravityForms and what can be improved on it. And so, like, if I'm working on a client project, I go, oh, well, this particular thing, we don't have a hook for it. Why don't we have a hook? Boom, add the hook. Now we have a hook when somebody else runs into that issue as well. So it's one of those things that it really, really, really helps a lot to do client work outside of the same company that you work for, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does, because you're getting a kind of a real-world use example. Like, it's always it's interesting to me to see how people use my theme, and sometimes it's in ways that I never. It was just surprising. Like, I didn't have that in mind. So it's interesting to see how other people take and interact with the product that you've made to make it their own. And I can see how that certainly helps with troubleshooting and improving the product based on that feedback.
All the time.
So setting the groundwork here. So you've got your fingers in several pies. Like most of us, you have multiple income avenues that you're pursuing that make the total package. That is the Jeff Matson, at least in WordPress. So let's talk a little bit about NotifyBot. First, if you could kind of explain what it is, and then also the story behind why you created it.
So, oh, Buddy's coming to see me. So
Hello,
say
puppy.
hello to my dogs. Buddy, you got to go lay down right now. So what Notify, and there's the other one. What NotifyBot really is it's a way to manage your site in general, especially if you have multiple users that are constantly making changes on the site. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that a lot of times, specifically like GravityForms documentation, for example, we have so many people that may be tweaking things or changing things. And I primarily write most of the documentation, but if a support guy needs a quick article to send somebody, he may write one or tweak something because it's not explained in this article or whatever it is. There's so many people touching all kinds of different articles. And the same goes for a lot of other different sites that I have that I see where, you know, you may have employees that are adding products and easy digital downloads, or you may have a lot of form submissions going on through GravityForms. What NotifyBot does is allows you to receive notifications based on those events. So if for example, a form is submitted through GravityForms, you can have the ability to receive a text message letting you know about it. And even with some of the form content in the fields, things like that. If, say, a product was changed or a new order came in with easy digital downloads, you can at that point receive a text message or a Slack notification or an email notification or logging or whatever it is. It's just a overall monitoring type plugin, and in the newest update, actually, there's going to be webhooks and stealth mode to put on client sites and actually be able to, the client has no clue that it's even there, unless of course they went into the file system or the database. Allows you to monitor and make sure you know exactly what that client's doing on that site.
Interesting. Okay, so you can set up a variety of ways to get pinged, but it sounds like it's kind of a way to keep tabs and see if,
right.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess it could be like a notification tool. Hey, I've made a sale, but
right.
More of designed to kind of know what's going on. And then is that logged where you can kind of go back in a single space and see all those?
Yeah. So there's at the moment there is a logging functionality. That's going to be another thing that's improved down the road. Right now it just writes to log files, but at some point, whenever I figure out the UI, because we all know I'm a horrible designer and front-end developer, as soon as I figure that out, then a whole logging functionality will be added, very similar to Stream, but a whole lot more powerful.
Cool. Devinder asked, how does NotifyBot handle email notification delivery, which of course in WordPress is not, well, we'll just call it doesn't always work consistently. So
what this does is I've seen a lot of those email notification issues, especially GravityForms customers that are saying, I didn't get my form notification. Like, well, you know, it's actually your server and WordPress are both kind of having issues. WordPress is sending it as this. The server's rejecting it because it's sending it as this. So what you can actually do is you can modify a lot of the different settings directly inside the WP mail function, which runs through PHP Mailer. So you can modify those directly, and you can set your to address, your from address. You can send from SMTP using any settings you want, and that's configurable per notification in the event that you wanted to do that. As well as there's the ability that is coming soon, because it's as extensible as it is, extensions for things like SendGrid or Amazon SNS or really any other mail service.
Good deal. All right, Devinder, I hope you were taking notes on that one, or just press rewind. So did you create the plugin? Were you scratching your own itch, or was this something you were already using in a more primitive form on sites you were working on, or was it something that somebody else was like, you should do this because there's the marketplace needs it?
The very first plugin that I actually put on WordPress.org was a plugin called WP SMS notifications, which basically just sent text message notifications and used email. Is it email to SMS? Yeah, I guess email to SMS to send text messages without the need for an external service. And that handled notifications like new plugin installs and different things like that. But I'd been talking about it for a while and and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll just expand on that. Maybe I'll release something that's like that, but even better. And so I'd been talking about it for a while, and I was trying to figure out a way to save up money to buy a house. And the answer to that was my buddy Dave over at GravityForms, and he goes, just release the damn plugin. He's like, just make the damn plugin, sit down, write it, get it taken care of, release that, and see how it goes. And he really pushed me to get it started, as well as the other guys over at RocketGenius really pushed me and encouraged me a lot. And then here it is, you know, several months later after I started, still going, and now getting more and more massive improvements, trying to get things worked out. Actually, now that I'm actually just thinking of it, is that another one of the biggest reasons I created it was because in GravityForms, we'd always have all these people that are like, you know, I'm not getting my notification, I'm not doing this, you know, and it was just sending through WP mail. Well, what if I could create a solution that fixes that whole problem? And then I realized that a whole lot of other people have that same problem, in that their built-in notification system in their plugin, they just don't have the time to build out a whole infrastructure for it. You know, I was talking to Josh over at CalderaForms, who said, yeah, this is a problem that we currently have as well. What can we work out? How can we make this happen? And so it was just a huge need, as well as just kind of my own itch there.
And I like that your buddy told you just to get it out the door already, because I think it is the temptation to wait until things are perfect.
Right.
But then there's that stress of, oh my gosh, I launched this, and crap, not everything works right. And not to hijack, but just as an example of this week, I launched the Office Hours FM community last month, and it was one of those things where it's just, I mean, I could keep tinkering with it forever, but just let's go ahead and get it out the door. And it's built on BBPress and BuddyPress, of which I don't know a whole lot about previous to this project. So yesterday I got on the call with Remkus de Vries, who is awesome. I don't know if you've gotten to meet him, Jeff, but he does a lot of BuddyPress consulting, and I was asking him some questions. Okay, how do I do X? How do I do Y? How do I do Z? Or is this a bad idea? Or is that a good? And he goes, hold your horses. Except he didn't say hold your horses, because that was how I interpret it. Hold your horses. Wait. One of the first things we always tell clients is wait and see what your community actually asks for. Wait and see what people say that they're wanting to use. The temptation to want to not feature bloat, but just be feature rich right out the gate is so tempting. But like, that was more kind of selfishly about what I wanted to do, and maybe is something that ultimately the community will want or will not want. And anyways, I just kind of I just hijacked that and made it about me. But
oh, yeah, no, it makes a good point though, because it's one of those things that I am actually diagnosed OCD, and I will sit there and stare at something and make sure it's absolutely flawless every single time I'm writing any piece of code. And you know, it was actually at Pressnomics at the after party. I was sitting there talking to Alex, who's one of the founders of GravityForms, actually the guy who originally wrote it. And me and Alex sitting there, and we were talking about this project we're trying to get done and everything. He's like, dude, stop making it perfect. Just get it done. That's all it is. It's just stop making it perfect. Don't keep tweaking at it and messing with it and messing with it and messing with it, because you're never actually going to be happy with it. Just get it done and then improve later.
So like what you're doing right now, like you mentioned, it needs some UI help because that's not your main strength. Is that something that you've gotten already some early feedback on? Hey, dude, this is terrible or could be better. Or is that just something you know that you was sort of already on your roadmap post-launch?
So before I actually launched it, me and Dave at RocketGenius, we were sitting there talking, and we were going over the UI and trying to determine how it was going to operate. Initially, I started talking. I started kind of going one direction. At Pressnomics, I actually talked to Michelle Schulp, who is an incredible designer, and I was like, "Hey, how the hell am I going to get this done? Like this, I cannot. It doesn't make sense because there's so many different options, and I don't want it to be ridiculously massive." And she actually sat down right there, drew up, you know, a wireframe for me, and said, just go in this direction. And I said, all right. And so that's what I did, and I went in that direction. And then I'm getting closer and closer and closer to release, and I've gone in that direction, but then I've realized, oh no, what have I done? This is still too much. It was still just that so many options were hitting you in the face, because keep in mind that, like, for example, I am monitoring every single setting that can be changed in WordPress core. And so like that alone is just a massive amount of stuff. Never mind, you know, 20 to 30 different triggers and GravityForms, and then a bunch in EDD and a bunch all over the place. And so I needed to further simplify things. And shortly before we released, I was talking to Dave, and he was like, I think this is the direction you should go in. This would be really, really cool to do. And the problem was, I was already, the UI was already done. I was building add-ons at this point. And so with the add-on, with the UI being done, I didn't want to push the date, and I was tempted to do so, but I didn't want to push the date. It was a whole, just get it done. Just, it doesn't matter, I can improve it later, just get it done. And that's exactly what I did. I went ahead and just released it with the UI that I had, and then which still looks great. And then now I'm actually completely redoing the UI based on what Dave told me, and also what some feedback that I got from Pippin as well. So we shall see. Right now, it's going along really well. It's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of very dynamic content and things shifting around and different things like that. But it's definitely looking really, really nice.
Good. Glad to hear it. I was trolling around on the NotifyBot website earlier, and I noticed that you published an article called "A New Pricing Structure and Why NotifyBot Isn't Free." And you're not doing the freemium model, correct?
No, there's no freemium involved, and that post describes exactly why. Is that the thing is that I can't support freemium, right? So like you can't, if you have a big freemium model, what happens to all your free users is that they don't get the support that they need. And if they want help, and if they want to be able to get constant updates and be able to really fuel development and hard development on this, that you really can't sustain it. And so the whole reason I went 100% premium on it is that it's like, look, you know, the code's still GPL, so you can do whatever you want with it at that point. But the whole purpose behind the going fully premium versus a freemium model is I wanted to make sure that everybody that has my plugin gets awesome support, that gets constant updates, and they know I'm 100% back behind this plugin and not just only caring about the premium users.
No, that makes total sense. But it also looks like you were sort of struggling, or I might have misread the article, but struggling on finding that initial price point and where you'll set the price. Can you kind of walk through how you priced it and your thoughts on how that might shift in the future?
So I was thinking, my initial pricing was it was 50, 150, and 300 on the 3 different tiers. And I came to the realization that at the current state that it's in, it can't sustain, it doesn't have the value there. The value just doesn't quite exist at that pricing. And so I was like, you know what? Worst case scenario, I drop the pricing, grandfather everybody else in that bought it at the old pricing, and then just bump the pricing up later if I get a ton of traffic and there's a whole lot of users, and if I really need it. Right now, of course, it's not a full-time gig, although I put full-time hours into it. So I can actually, at the moment, I can afford a little bit of lower pricing because it's all just it's just extra income at this point. Now later down the road, if I decide to increase my pricing, sure, you know, I'll go that route. But right now, the pricing is where it is to make it perfectly affordable that anybody can buy it on kind of an impulse buy. You know, like the basic plugin's $25. You know, it's very much impulse buy possible. When you start hitting $50 on a plugin, that's I need this kind of thing, or even $300, of course, for my top level license. The pricing was initially set kind of on a whim. I
hear that a lot on this show.
It was just kind of like, you know what, I think this is fair, and you know, it is a fair pricing for what it's going to be in the future. But right now, of course, it's got a lot of value, but it doesn't have that massive value. Something like GravityForms that has, where it's almost like you have to have GravityForms. This is kind of something that is a nice thing to have, but not always completely necessary for every site.
Well, Jackie's question fits in nicely here. So speaking of nice to have versus a have to have, she says, can you give some examples of who uses NotifyBot and how it helps them, or why they might turn to NotifyBot?
So right now, there's not a huge adoption, and I don't have a ton of feedback on specific use cases, although I do have different feedbacks from friends that I've given copies to and various other developers and things like that. And so a lot of the use cases actually are coming from other developers that have a solution that they already needed on their plugins. They already have customers contacting them and saying, hey, I need this, your plugin doesn't do it, how can we make this happen? So like I was talking to Pippin, for example, right? And he said, hey, you know what would be awesome, and we get requests about is, can you set a notification to only trigger on orders that are over X amount? And I go, yeah. And so it's in there now. You can set it based on order amounts. And then so another thing I was kind of going over with another kind of a WordPress concierge service. I don't know if I can I can talk exactly about the specifics, but there's a WordPress concierge service that I'm speaking to that they're currently running Stream on all their stuff. But Stream is actually getting in the way with a few different things. And so we're talking about right now of how NotifyBot can fit that solution and be able to run on their client sites that they're monitoring without actually getting in the way of anything, and staying as far off to the side as possible. And that's one of the reasons why the stealth mode is coming out very soon, is that like a client would have no clue it's even there at all, and they don't care. It doesn't matter to them. They just want their site running fine. And on the agency perspective, or the concierge service type perspective, they're able to say, you know, hey, what did you do on this site? And they're like, I didn't do anything. I didn't touch it. I didn't touch that setting. I promise. Yes, you did. It's in the logs right here that you did. So those are the kind of the biggest use cases. Is more so people that are maintaining a lot of different sites, or if you have a lot of traffic and you're trying to monitor specific things. Like I would love to know if a $1,000 order comes in. That way I can take care of it right away, versus, you know, the $5 orders that trickle in or so maybe on a site. You know, when that big order comes in, it's priority. And
yeah,
to be able to
I need to know to go pick up a bottle of champagne on my way home.
Exactly. So if you're driving down the road and you're driving and you're trying to, you know, you had a long day, and the best thing to do is to get a text message saying, hey, I had a $10 million order come into my site. That way you can go ahead and stop off at your travel agent and get a good vacation in.
Nice. Jackie said that NotifyBot is a nanny cam for WordPress.
It is. I may have to.
So serious question. Is there any ethical issues about running this in stealth mode, or could you argue that it's something that, a web host could be doing at their level anyways and not have necessarily client visibility?
So that's a main thing that I actually discussed. Is that I was sitting there when I decided to put this in. I was like, this would be an awesome thing. A lot of people would really, really, really want this feature. The problem is that it feels bad. It feels nasty. It just feels like something you shouldn't do. And so after it took a long time talking about it and really, really, really thinking about it, and I spoke to several different people from different agencies. I spoke to several developers, various friends of mine, and said, "Is this a bad idea?" And their answer was, "No, it's not a bad idea at all. It's perfectly fine. If the host can monitor everything to begin with, anyways. I mean, I worked for a web hosting company before coming to RocketGenius. You see everything you do, absolutely everything, and it's all logged too." Just through access logs, the HTTP access logs or error logs or whatever. And so honestly, like, it's not necessarily, it helps the client more than it hurts the client, right? So that if all of a sudden you start seeing a bunch of strange activity that's coming in on the site, would you rather than be running a stealthy plugin in there that caught that as it was happening, or would you rather nothing be monitoring your site and you only find out that your site was currently being hacked after the fact?
You exist for forces of good, not evil.
Right, exactly. And is it possible to use this plugin for evil? Sure, it's entirely possible, but it's really all up to the person that's running the plugin, not necessarily the creator, if that makes any sense.
For a quick note, for those who eventually are listening to the audio-only version of this podcast on iTunes or such, what you're missing right now on your screen is a very cute dog. Yeah. Okay. So we can we can carry on. We are at about the halfway point, so appreciate those of you who've got some questions in. Feel free to keep sending them on. I did want to very much thank today's episode sponsor, SiteLock. They are an easy-to-use website security management plugin that puts everything in one place. So you can access your security dashboard from within your WordPress admin. And hopefully, if you're using something like SiteLock, then you don't need NotifyBot to tell you that your site is being hacked. You only need NotifyBot to tell you about those $1,000 sales. So you can check out more on them at sitelock.com/office hours. So last week, I was chatting with Peter Soom over at the WP Pusher plugin, and he does have a freemium model. However, due to the way that some of the things that his plugin does, I can't explain it very well. But anyways, it's not allowed in the WordPress repo. It violates their terms of service. So you being a premium model, that also excludes you from the WordPress repo, which of course would be a huge source of visibility and potential customers. So what's your strategy, or do you have a strategy for how you're going to market NotifyBot or kind of get it out to the masses?
Well, my hope was I would just go on this podcast with you, Carrie, and that sales would just roll in and I'd be making millions off of it already.
Well, I mean, check your NotifyBot right now, because the cash drawer is dinging, because I've got billions of followers, and even if they convert at like a fraction of 1%, I mean, we're off to buy the champagne.
I might be retiring tomorrow.
But other than that.
So the purpose is that in most of the main marketing model really is a use case word of mouth type thing. And so by integrating with the various plugins that I'm integrating with, I'm allowing the users of those plugins to go to my plugin for another solution that's not currently offered in that plugin. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, but basically, you have a problem, and you get a support ticket that says, hey, I wish that I could be notified when this event happens. Well, turns out that there's a NotifyBot extension for it. Go get it, and your problem's solved. That's most of the marketing thing. It's kind of one of those things that the word's kind of got to get out there a little bit more. And of course, WordPress.org is a great way to push it. Oh, and there goes the dogs. That's the joys of having Pitbull and a mailman.
I think the mailman has arrived.
The mailman has indeed arrived. Guys, be good. So, anyways, guys. Anyways, so what happened? Instead of the promotion from WordPress.org, it's mainly relying on those other plugins that are supported by NotifyBot. And WordPress.org is a great way to promote it. The thing is that there's so many plugins in there that they don't support it on a level of service that I would want to see, right? So it's hard to answer every single ticket that comes in. And I have a plugin, Heartbeat Control's got 20,000 plus active installs. If I get 20,000 active installs with NotifyBot, that'd be awesome. But I can't support 20,000 users right now. Especially if they're constantly asking me for help on support tickets and things like that. So it's kind of one of those trade-offs.
So what I'm hearing is you're leaving your marketing to the plugins that NotifyBot can extend.
Yeah, right. Well, it's that, as well as obviously awareness that the plugin even exists to begin with, and for other people to say, okay, yeah, this is a cool idea. I need to go ahead and install this plugin and get it running. But I think the bulk of the value really comes down into all those add-ons and things like that.
For the record, Patty's dogs are now barking after hearing your dogs barking on the podcast. So we're creating barking dogs everywhere. And amazingly, or thankfully, I'm wearing earbuds. Otherwise, the two that are asleep at my feet would be yapping up a storm right now. That's funny, Patty. Jackie asks, what's the most important thing you've learned from providing support that helped you improve the plugin? Great question.
So I've been doing support type things for quite a while. And so based on, I think most of the development of the plugin actually came from prior support versus the support that I'm required to do right now. So the support that I have right now is rather minimal. It's a lot of, hey, how do I do this? Is there a hook for this? How is this configured or anything like that? Which of course, write a doc for it and you're usually good. But the prior things that I learned from being in a support type role, which I guess docs is even still support on a level, is that you really, really need to pay attention to make sure everything is right there in your face all the time. And the purpose in that is really the choice, the choices not options type thing. That's one of the things that I definitely have learned quite a bit, is that don't present people with too much information. And that was actually the issue with the original UI, is that there was way too much information on the screen. And so now the new UI it's very much broken down. You select add a new trigger, you add the trigger, and then you can add another one, add another one, add another one. Versus all of the triggers being there, and you can enable and then open up options for that trigger and that sort of thing. So really, there's something to learn from every support ticket, I think. If you're getting a support ticket about something, there's a problem. Unless it's a super, super edge case, somebody else has got that same problem. And so to fix that, just fix it in the plugin, or fix it in your docs, or fix it somewhere else. It's not something that you'd want to completely send in, respond to the same ticket over and over and over again. It's find the problem and fix it.
Yeah, I think that's a killer point there to fix your docs. That's probably one of the biggest things I've learned in doing product support is if I get the same question more than once, then I have not addressed something in my documentation that clearly is and actually, my documentation's gotten better over time thanks to those emails.
Oh, entirely. And that's one of the things one of the best pieces of advice I can really give anybody that runs a product or needs any sort of documentation is to actually actively go through your tickets every day or at least once a week and say, what are people contacting about? And get feedback from your support guys. Make sure your support guys can hit you up at any time and say, hey, we don't have docs on this. I need this. Because that's what happens regularly for me is that, hey, look, we need docs for this. Okay, well, now they're written. Or hey, put in a ticket and I'll get them knocked out as soon as possible, type of thing.
Out of curiosity, what do you guys use for your docs? Are you using like Help Scout documentation or anything?
NotifyBot is using Help Scout, mainly because I was already doing enough development on the the plugin. I didn't want to have to develop a doc system. The GravityForms is all custom written.
Interesting. Yeah, I've thought of moving to the Help Scout docs are a really elegant solution. I've pondered moving over there, but haven't pulled the trigger.
I'm pondering moving off of them.
Really? To a custom?
Yeah, to something more custom. Mainly because when you start getting really granular and into large amounts of documentation, like the GravityForms docs would never survive on there because you have to break things down so far. And the Help Scout docs only let you break things down into one category. Or it's either one category or like a subcategory. There's like sections and then there's categories within each section. It's really strange, but it doesn't allow you, either you have too much on the page or you don't have enough in your docs. It's very...
So you can't cross-reference very easily, like via tags or something?
I mean, you can still, cross-reference and link different places, but what I like to do with my docs is that you'll have user documentation and then developer documentation. If you take a look at, for example, the GravityForms documentation is all organized by myself, is that you have user documentation and developer documentation. And then inside those, you're going to have, developer docs, you're going to have, hooks. And then you're going to have, classes or whatever. And then inside hooks, you're going to have actions and filters. And then, and then inside that, you're going to have each individual action or each individual filter. And so breaking it down that way allows people to get to exactly what they're wanting to get to fast enough. And if they don't know what they want, they just use the search. And you can't really do that with Help Scout docs, at least in my experience.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know. Mine probably would not be that granular, but that's interesting to note. And was a little bit of a sidebar. But while we're on the topic of documentation, for folks that are listening and have products that they have not documented, or maybe they have barely documented, any recommendations or things that they should definitely think of?
Well, there's actually, obviously we don't have a full hour for me to explain this, but there is a full hour, maybe 30 minutes. But it's there is a good bit on WordPress.tv. If you search for my name, there is 2 videos, one from Orlando and one from, where else did I do that talk? No, somewhere else. Dayton, that's right, Dayton, Ohio. And there's 2 different talks about that with writing better documentation than I do, that I kind of go over some of the stuff. But a few of the biggest points are mostly write like your reader is a 5-year-old. Make sure that everything is very well spelled out, and it'll not only help the readability, but it'll also help translatability. If somebody's translating your page, it's easier to translate simple text than it is more complex sentence structures. Another thing would be to break things down so that they're more scannable. So if you notice in my docs, when you go to certain things, there's actually, if I'm giving you steps, it's going to say, click on this, then click on this, then do this, then enter in this. And those specific things are bolded. So you don't even have to read the article. You can just look at the bolded stuff and know exactly where to go. It's kind of a balance between complexity as well as simplicity that you have to kind of, it's a little bit of an art. But if you can capture that, then your docs are massively improved.
I love the documentation advice. What are your thoughts on using video versus like step-by-step written out instruction?
Text first, video after. Because you'll run into people like me who do not want to watch a video. I just want to read real quick and find out what I need, find the code example or whatever, and I'm done. But there are also people that love video. So if you're doing something like initial setup steps for your plugin or your theme, then a video, that's a perfect opportunity for a video right there. Definitely have some sort of video is always a good idea. But obviously make sure you have the text first before you have the video, because you may have somebody like me who just doesn't want to, I don't want to watch a video. I want to just read it real quick, figure out how to do it, and that's it. Or I just want a specific thing in those steps. And written content works a lot better. But obviously some people are more visual learners, so obviously the video helps others.
A little bit of both. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't particularly like to watch the video just because it's usually a longer time investment than scanning an article, exactly. Looking out what you need.
And images though, but the good balance between that though is written content with lots of images. If you're trying to walk somebody through a process, having images next to each step definitely helps that out.
What have you used to do your like screen grabs and then like overlay a arrow or something to point out a menu item?
I typically just do I'll just do a Command Shift 4 and do a little screen grab and with the native Mac screenshot program. And then if I need an arrow or something, usually I'll just Photoshop something in. I usually don't use too many arrows though.
Yeah, getting the images or the screenshots is one of the most tedious parts of it. I wondered if you had some secret workflow on on grabbing those.
Usually,
but it sounds like you do what I do: screenshot plus Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly. And I usually it's actually rather rare that I even Photoshop anything. So if I'm showing somebody that they need to select something within a select box, right? All I do is I will click on that select box to open it up. Maybe with my mouse highlight over the option that they need to select and then screenshot that, so that there's no arrows required or anything like that. It's most things nowadays have hover states. So you can tell the difference of when something's hovered, so just hover it and then make the screenshot. You can usually get some good results from that.
Good stuff. And Patty is saying over on Twitter that she likes Snagit for that purpose.
Yeah, Snagit works well as well. Yeah, I've used it in the past. I just, I already have a quick little Command Shift 4 that works fine for me.
Well, for those of you who are listening live, we've got a few minutes left here with Jeff, so holler out if you've got a question. In the meantime, I did want to share with listeners again about the, I mentioned it earlier, but the Office Hours FM community. You can find out more about that over at my.officehours.fm. And that's basically a place to take some conversations from the podcast and continue them on, and even start new conversations. We've already had some good stuff going on over there, talking about small business accounting and how to produce an ebook and all sorts of just extra content that's not available directly here on the podcast. So please do check that out. All righty, we have got, we're still talking screen grabs over here. The vendor says once you grab screenshots, organizing them properly in folders is key before posting them in the final documentation. Yes, that's a pro tip. Otherwise, you get like a bunch of file names that are like screenshot the date.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the way usually, so like server side, our screenshots are a complete mess. Like it's horrible. But we're just using the media, the media gallery in WordPress, and it works just fine. But yeah, I don't even want to know what my desktop looks like, because of course the default Mac screen grabber is going to have is going to just chuck it on your desktop as screenshot whatever. Usually what I'll do is I write my article out first and then go through each step and try to do screenshots for each step. And with that, I will screenshot them all, and then it all says screenshot, and then I'll rename them to, getting started 1, getting started 2, getting started 3, and then kind of go from there. And then if I need to elaborate further on that file name, then I will. But it's still like I have probably 50, 60 screenshots still sitting on my desktop right now I need to delete.
Do you use any image compression software before you're putting those up?
Usually, it compresses it rather well, actually, even with the default Mac screenshot tool. The files usually aren't very big, and then everything's already compressed into a thumbnail anyways, is when it's actually displayed. So I never actually display the full screenshot on the page. I'm compressing everything into a thumbnail and then dropping it that way. But nothing specific that I'm running all my screenshots through, no.
Okay, now I've got, just after we get off the air, I'm going to go look at your documentation and see what you got going on. Jackie mentions that she really likes awesomescreenshot.com. It's there's a Chrome extension and it's easy to annotate. Cool, some good suggestions. And Devinder saying he likes the old print screen with Photoshop magic. Yes, long live Photoshop. This is so totally off. We're going off the beaten path today, but I will mention I just discovered Canva, which you can, if you saw the Twitter card for this episode, Jeff, you commented that you liked the picture I used. I liked your windy hair in that one. But it's really super easy to take an image, do text overlays or whatnot, and it's free. Like you can do fancy paid stuff, but yeah. So if you're not a Photoshop buff, check out Canva. Whew. Well, while we're on tips, tricks, and tools, what else you got?
Let's see. I don't know. Use a autoloader in your PHP. Always use an autoloader, and namespace things properly. Tips and tricks, things that I constantly do.
So an autoloader, do tell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, basically what you're doing is, obviously in object-oriented programming, you're constantly calling one class for one thing and one class for another thing, and then you have a million other requires all over your code and includes and all kinds of mess. An autoloader will just allow you to call that class, and it will automatically run all the requires and everything for you. So you don't have to run all those individually on each file, and then you realize that, why isn't this function here? Well, because I haven't called the require yet, and all that other mess. The autoloader will handle all that for you. So, the way NotifyBot works is that as soon as you chuck something in with something that matches our pattern in terms of your file, your file structure and everything like that, it'll automatically load all your classes and chuck it into NotifyBot. It doesn't actually require much else than that.
It's like your code bellhop. It just takes all your things up for you.
It does it.
Which that made me think of something. So with other plugins, like you can send a notification if you get an EDD sale or something like that. NotifyBot is basically just watching for database triggers, or it's not specifically looking by, or does it have any functions specifically tied to other plugins, or is it just going off database actions?
No, well, so it can, but the way that most of the notifications run are actually within actions that are already baked into those plugins. So a lot of times I'm just monitoring a specific action. So, whether it be, I'm watching for actions that only happen on checkout, or I'm watching for a particular action, like you have a custom post type that's created when a new order comes in on Easy Digital Downloads, for example. I'm watching for those custom post types, and based on the custom post type, if it matches this particular pattern, and then, of course, with the conditional logic that's in NotifyBot and everything, if it matches that conditional logic, then it shoots it off through. Otherwise, it just neglects it and says, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All kinds of fun things you didn't expect to learn on today's episode.
Oh, yeah?
Thank you, sir. We're about to wrap. People are making fun of me on Twitter for not having previously discovered Canva. I know. I have my head stuck in a hole on most days. Wanted to mention before we wrap up, if you're not already getting email reminders from me each week about episodes or upcoming episodes, you can do that over at officehours.fm/subscribe. Along with that, you will also receive a copy of the Office Hours FM ebook, which is beautiful. If it was printed, I would put it on my coffee table. And I can say it's beautiful because I didn't have a hand in designing it. That was all Diane Kinney's handiwork. Like you, Jeff, my design skills are a little sketchy. And also, again, thank you to SiteLock for being a partner on this episode. Jeff, any parting words of wisdom for Office Hours FM listeners?
Let's see here. I think we already went over this, but I will say that the parting words are get the project done. It can be perfect later.
I think that sums it up nicely. All right. Well, on that note, Jeff, where can people find you online to follow up with you or just say hello or stalk you?
You can find me on Twitter as at the Jeff Matson. I try to be as entertaining as possible. You can also, my blog I post on every once in a while is jeffmatson.net, as well as there is NotifyBot.io, which is the super cool product that I make. And then at the NotifyBot is actually the NotifyBot Twitter.
Does the NotifyBot Twitter? Oh wait, never mind. I was going to try to make a bad notification joke, but I'm going to stop myself right there before I go any further. To you guys who tuned in live today and asked questions, as always, thank you so much. I appreciate you participating. And if you're catching this after the fact, I so appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And with that, we will see all you guys next week. Bye. Thanks, Jeff.